What's up, vinyl community? Kieran here, Needle Groove. Doing something a little different today. Invited my friend Nathan to join me. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that my favorite shop here in Montreal is Au 33 Tours. In my opinion, the best shop in the city, and the first shop that I started going to regularly years ago. And Nate was someone that I remember from day one going in, and he was the guy that was there at the counter, and he would just always be there. And that's the first person that I had a relationship with at a record store. As you guys know, shopping at a record store, great place to get recommendations. And Nate's that guy that I connected with that had similar taste to me. And that was many years ago. And since we've become friends, and he's a wealth of knowledge. So I thought if you follow my channel and appreciate what I put out there, that you'd appreciate hearing a bit about Nate and his vinyl journey and get him to show some records. So we'll jump right in. What's up, Nathan?
Hey, how's it going?
So yeah, just tell us, start off with like how you got into this crazy thing of loving records and buying records, and just the passion for music. How did that start for you?
Well, I guess it started with cassettes actually back in the day, like maybe late 80s. I was introduced to, I grew up in the Seattle area, so I first got into like West Coast rap through an older cousin who was always bumping it in his ride every time I'd visit him. And he put me on to a lot of like Too Short and Ice-T and, you know, all the bigger artists back then. And then I, you know, started watching UMTV raps and all that, and just got deeper into hip hop. And kind of, yeah, that was my first love. After that, maybe by grade 7 or 8, grade 8, that was like the big grunge explosion in Seattle and worldwide. So, you know, I was definitely deep in that for a minute. Had long hair and the whole works, you know. So yeah, a lot of just like alternative rock and grunge and all that. After that,
You lived in Seattle in like right in like the middle of your high school. Was that whole grunge kind of the peak of it?
well, I lived in the suburbs of Seattle, about 20 minutes outside the city. But I mean, the whole region was just, you know, that's what was popping there, and as it was elsewhere at that time. We're talking like, you know, 93, 92, 93.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's always that cousin or that sister or brother or someone that gets you into hip hop or music, like that older, me, it was my older sister. I remember going to buy Snoop Dogg Doggy Style with her. And I was like, I didn't know what hip hop was at that time. I was, you know, I'm a bit younger than you, but yeah, it's always someone feeding you the drugs.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't see my cousin often, but he definitely, you know, he was the first person I met who was really listening to hip hop.
Yeah.
And I caught my ear and just
Cool.
kind of went off from there. I started like making, you know, taping out, like I'd use my weekly allowance. I had $10 a week. I'd use it to buy a cassette every weekend, and I'd tape them for friends and bring them to school in like 5th grade, 6th grade.
Those are when you watch like Crate Digger videos and stuff, it's always that story of like using your lunch money to buy records or your allowance, and like just like
Yeah.
that's what you're doing, but you as cassettes. Okay, so when did it start for you? Like from there, mid '90s, you were in high school, and then when did you get into where did it
Yeah. Oh, like I said, I was kind of into, you know, like indie rock and, you know, that kind of stuff for a bit. And then it kind of like started exploring like the fringes of that, you know, kind of getting to more like noise rock and kind of weirdo rock stuff. And then that brought me to just straight up like experimental music, you know, noise, field recordings, just anything that where, you know, the focus was on sound itself. That's what I got into for a good couple years. I was pretty deep.
how were you absorbing that through like CDs, tapes, digital records? Where were you?
All of that actually, cassettes, CDs, and vinyl.
So
But
when
that's when I first got into vinyl. That's when I first started buying records, because, you know, some of the stuff that I wanted was only available on record.
and that was what, in the late '90s or?
This would have been, yeah, late 90s. Yeah.
So your first records were like some weirdo experimental records?
Yeah, along with a few other just random like rock records and stuff like that. I got some records from my stepfather too. We had a collection of 60s rock. He's from California.
Like we all did.
Yeah.
I feel like you told me you bought D'Angelo's Voodoo when it came out on vinyl. Like you still have your copy.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I got that at Tower Records in New York City in 2000
Yeah.
when it came out. Yeah, I had a friend who was living there, and he was like, "Oh, have you heard the new D'Angelo album? You need that." So he took me to Tower Records when I was down there visiting him, and that's it. I grabbed it.
So when you were buying that stuff, that was like when you started buying records, was that going into shops and digging for used stuff?
When I first got into records, yeah, I was definitely going into stores and buying used records.
And
I was buying new stuff too, as well.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, both.
And then where to go from there, knowing like our common, like obviously we both like different styles of music, but jazz seems to be one of our common threads. When did that start? Like where did you go from there, from early 2000s? How did that evolve?
Okay, well, after my my deep experimental phase, and I still like that stuff too, but I mean, I kind of moved on, and I kind of came back to hip hop after that. I guess it was kind of due to the indie hip hop explosion of the late 90s. That caught my, you know, the obvious guys like Madlib, MF Doom, Dilla, those guys got me interested again heavily into hip hop. So was buying a lot of that for a while, and then, you know, the typical story: you're into hip hop, you start listening to the samples, and you start thinking like, that's a jazz sample, I like that sample, I need that record. Funk, soul, reggae, you know, the whole nine. Like, it just psychedelic rock, you know, like you start realizing the guys like Pete Rock were sampling psych records and soft machine records and stuff like that. And it just caught my ear and exposed me to a lot of other genres of music that I hadn't really delved into too much. And yeah.
And at this, where does the move from Seattle to, you came here for university, right? If I remember correctly. That was a year.
That was in 99.
That was in 99. Okay, so your trip to New York makes more sense. It's a bit closer. That was probably from Montreal.
Exactly. Yeah. So I went down to visit my friend in New York, who had just moved to New York when I moved to Montreal in 99. And
so you were hitting up used record stores. Like, were you buying records in university? Probably you were living in a small place. Like, did you bring your records with you from Seattle to Montreal?
Yeah, I brought them. I didn't have a huge collection at that point, though.
Yeah.
But it really took off when I moved to Montreal.
Yeah.
I was buying lots of records, and I still have most of them. I haven't really got rid of that many over the years, although I'm trying to downsize now. But I have the time to go through my old records now, and I'm thinking, like, do I need this in my life or not?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And okay, so then you were starting to get into jazz and soul. I know you like all types of, like, from like even 60s soul to like 70s funk to, you know, more out there jazz to traditional jazz. Like, I remember you'd always be recommending all types of different stuff to me. Like, you have a really vast repertoire of things that you like. You don't like stick with one thing.
No, I really don't. And it's been like that, you know, since I can remember. Like, even though I've had, like, you know, periods where certain styles were emphasized, like, I've always been kind of open to different stuff. And yeah, now I'm all over the place. Like, there's no hope for me, man. Like, I mean, folk, whatever. Like, I mean, I'm into all styles of music, pretty much.
So Nathan is the gatekeeper at the 33 Tours, one of the gatekeepers that gets a lot of the used stuff that comes in. He's the first one to see it. So basically, the reason why I don't get as many good records is because Nate is filtering them all. It's also
we're a team of buyers, by the way. It's not just me.
How would you say that has, like, influenced or changed your, like, record buying, like, habits working in a record store over the years? Like, it definitely it changes it for sure, because you're seeing so many records come through.
Yeah, it's certainly up the ante. I mean, it's a big record store, and we have a lot of records coming through all the time. So the temptation is there daily.
You also,
Really
I feel like it gives you more of a like ability to like, no, I don't need that. Like you see so much stuff come through. It's like both, right? I feel like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to be selective. I can't afford. I don't make a ton of money there. Let's be honest. So I have to pick and choose. Certain records I know, okay, I'm going to see that one again because I've seen it 3, 4, 5 times in the past couple of years. Other ones, you know, I know I'm never going to see it again, most likely. I'm grabbing it. So it's gotta, yeah, it's how I prioritize usually.
So talk to us.
If it's good, I don't buy a record. I don't buy a record just because it's rare though, you know, like I have to really like it.
No, Nate is definitely he's very selective with what he buys, I would say. And I feel like that's part of buying it. Like when you start, you're willing to just buy all types of stuff, try out. But when you work in a record store, it's like, okay, you can't buy everything. Like it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So you start to know what you like, and you are, like I said, a wealth of knowledge. So when something catches your eye and you haven't seen it before, you know it's something because you've seen a lot of shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I still make mistakes though, buy stuff that I, you know, end up not really appreciating that much. You know, when you first get into a genre of music that's kind of new to you, I feel like your ear has really developed. You can't really differentiate between the best records of that genre and the ones that are just kind of mediocre. The more you listen to it, the more records you buy from that style of music, you begin to like pick out the ones that you really that really speak to you. And yeah.
So like just we went through kind of your timeline up until mid 2000s, but knowing we spoke about a few different genres. What would you say are those genres that you're comfortable in, where you feel pretty confident, and what are some where you're still might make a mistake because you're not as knowledgeable?
I mean, I feel like I know what I like in hip hop. I know what I like in jazz, soul, funk, reggae. I'm getting there. Don't see a lot of reggae come through Montreal though, so that's a tough one. I've been getting, I guess it's more like in terms of maybe world music, so to speak. You know, I've got world music. You know, I'm like a very curious person. I studied anthropology in university, so I'm always attracted to records from elsewhere in the world, and sometimes I'll buy them just out of curiosity's sake. And then you know, they're not always the greatest records, but you don't see them all the time, and I just want to hear something different, so I'll grab it. But you know, they're not always essential records. So.
But it's interesting to hear what's going on at different times at different places, you know, like whether it's the 60s, 70s, 80s in different countries, you kind of get I'm passionate about food and music. Like I love discovering about different cultures through food and music, right? To hear kind of, and then when you start to not just hear it or taste it, but you start to learn like, okay, where did this come from this country? What's the story behind it? Then you're learning about the history of that place. And that's what I love in terms of my passions of food and music, is to just kind of learn about the place, you know, and the people.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, if I come across a record from, you know, music from Afghanistan, I'm probably gonna buy it like just on spec, you know.
Yeah.
Because I'm just curious. Like I just want to, you know, oftentimes the liner notes on the record, you just learn so much about the country and the people and the photographs, everything. It's the whole package. So yeah,
I feel like, I mean, my focus has been mainly jazz. I'm open to anything, but and maybe it's because it's my focus, but I feel Montreal, there's a lot of good jazz records coming through compared to soul, which would be the other genre that makes up the bulk of my collection. I feel like there's not as much funk and soul coming through Montreal, or there wasn't, I guess, in the 60s and 70s as much of that music being purchased as there was jazz, because I feel like there's a lot more used jazz. Like even the popular common jazz, like that are $5-10, there's a lot more of those than there are $5-10 soul records. Like when I go to the States, you see tons of those $5-10 or even super cheap soul records, because there was a lot more of that music being purchased. But I'm fortunate to have found all the jazz I found here, but that's just my observation. I don't know what you're at the, on the front lines, I would say, so you have a better idea than me. But
yeah, I mean, next to rock, jazz is probably the second most popular, form of music that I see come through in Montreal. Montreal's definitely a jazz city, and that jazz makes up the bulk of my collection as well. I love jazz. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite type of music. Well, it probably is, but I mean, I have so much of it also, not only because I love it, but because I see so much of it come through. And there's just so many good jazz records in the world too.
I also feel like with jazz, like once you get into it, one, we have access to it. Well, you do, but as do I, because there's a lot of it here. But like, I do love jazz, but it's not that I love it more than other types. It's easy to get sucked into that. Like you look at a jazz record and there's that effect of like, you look at who plays on it and there's that crossover effect. Oh, he plays on this and I know he plays on this. Like, I feel like that element is strongest in jazz compared to any other genre, in my opinion, where you buying records based on players from other records,
Yeah, because the players, they played with so many different people.
It's not like
so
this is my set band. Exactly.
Yeah, you just read the lineup and you say, oh, that piano player, I remember that guy from this other record that I liked.
And there's a bit of that in soul too, in terms of like session, and I'm not as knowledgeable, but it's not to the scale as jazz, because there was more of like bands and groups, you know what I mean? Versus jazz was every session could be a different band.
Yeah, oftentimes they would have like an in-house session band. Yeah.
So talk to me about your collection then. What like size-wise or approximately, and what are we talking about in terms of jazz and other genres? What's the anatomy of your collection?
Should I show you around? I mean, is that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're mobile right now, I think so.
I'm mobile. Yep. Okay. So tell me if you can't see what I'm pointing the phone at, but so this right here is, can you see that clearly? Yeah. This is jazz, soul, and funk all mixed together in alphabetical order.
Okay, you have you have jazz and soul and funk all together.
All together in alphabetical order. Yeah.
You want to do a couple random pulls, like blind pulls, just for fun?
Blind pulls.
It's like,
well, I have this record on the floor because I pulled it out the other day because I just saw this movie, which is amazing, by the way. It's a soundtrack by Mal Waldron, who I really love.
I love Mal Waldron, but I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, this is a really great soundtrack.
It's on Impulse too.
Yeah, on Impulse, and the movie is amazing too.
Like I have a lot of early 70s Mal records where it's like that really aggressive kind of rhythmic piano. Is it like that style, or is it more like melodic? What's the style?
It's melodic and kind of melancholic as well. Really beautiful. Yeah, definitely one to check out. Blind pull, I don't know.
It's not the Orange Spine.
Yeah, not the Coltrane section right here.
Was it Phil Cohran record you pulled out? Malcolm X?
Oh yeah. What is that? Oh, Phil Cohran.
Is that a
great art? No, it's not an original, unfortunately. I'd love to have that. Yeah, I really like Phil Cohran. I pretty much have everything he did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just gonna blindly pull something out. Bob Moses, Bittersweet in the Ozone. Kind of a private press jazz record from the early 70s. pretty good, not amazing, but worth checking out.
I've heard the name. I feel like there's something. Isn't there a record of him with an elephant in the title? Maybe I'm way off.
Yeah, I believe there is. Yeah, I don't think that one's very good though.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. But this one you don't see often, if ever. I had to buy that one online through a recommendation of a friend a long time ago.
Check it out.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I don't know.
This one.
Let's got that in here. Some Galt McDermott. That's an original Ghetto Suite.
Heavy pull. Oh,
that's an original. These are all original Galt McDermott records that I found for like $2 and $3 a piece, sealed about 10 years ago.
10 years ago? It's not even that long ago. In Montreal?
Maybe 15 years ago. Early. Let me think. Hold on a sec. About 2003, 2004. Okay. Around that time.
That makes sense.
It was that record shop Marché du Disque. I don't know if you remember that place on on Montreal. Yeah, they had supposedly they had like boxes of these sealed.
Crazy.
You know? Yeah, so you get lucky sometimes. It's rare now, like something like that.
Oh yeah.
Sealed for $3.
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, yeah, so that's jazz, funk, and soul. Down here, I've got some just kind of like newer acquisitions. Well, new like within the past, I don't know, couple of years maybe.
Like that you haven't filed away yet, or it's different genres?
Yeah, I just don't really have room to file them away, so they just kind of remain in the new arrivals section forever. So yeah,
gotta get rid of some shit.
What's that?
You gotta get rid of some stuff.
Yeah, I know. I also have more new arrivals down here on the floor. Just little piles of stuff all over. Over here is can you see that?
Yeah.
All good. Yeah. Over here is music from all over the world. Got Africa, and this stuff is not in alphabetical order, I believe.
By country or just random?
No, this is the African continent altogether here. Cool. From about here to here, and then we get into the islands, Haiti, Martinique, I don't know, Guadeloupe. What else?
Feel free to show us something random, Paul. Just show the people, get a sense of something.
Okay, yeah. I like this guy a lot. Haitian banjo player, Althiery Dorival. Got a few of his records. He's got a really harsh, raspy voice, and he plays a wicked banjo. And he's got a full band with him too. It's pretty awesome.
Some people seek out banjo music. I don't think too often, but I'm sure.
It's not solo. It's really upbeat, like kind of like party music, but he's playing a banjo. It's kind of unique, actually. What else? Then we get into, like, I guess we got Cuba here. That's an amazing record. Los Van Van's first album.
I have one of theirs, not that one.
Yeah. What else? So that's all Cuba. That's a great record from the 80s, Afrocuba.
I was supposed to, I don't know where we were supposed to do it, but when all this COVID-19 stuff went down, Nate and I were supposed to hang out on this Sunday night when like everything was just getting shut down. Like that weekend, it was like that middle of March, we were supposed to hang out, and we're like, do we be responsible? Do we not? And I think we were supposed to go over to your place actually.
Yeah.
And have a listening session, but that would have been the last thing we did, but we didn't do it. I kind of regret it now, knowing how long this is gonna last,
Yeah, I tried to coerce you guys into coming, but you guys were pussies. But for good reason.
My girlfriend not wanting me to go out, knowing that she recruiting nurses and is like getting all the info, and she's like, you can't go anywhere, blah blah blah. I was like,
okay. Yeah. No, gotta lay low.
Cool. That's all your world stuff. What's on the bottom shelf? Other countries?
Okay, so yeah, so we Brazil, and then
You have a
the
big
Middle
Brazilian
East.
section? I know, like, if you're
I,
into Mad Lib and all that, that was like a huge thing in the early 2000s.
yeah, I don't have a huge collection of Brazilian records, only because we don't see that many great Brazilian records come through.
Yeah.
I'd love to have more. I really like Brazilian, or a lot of Brazilian music. So then we get into the Middle East right here. Like I mentioned Afghanistan before. I really like music from there. They're tough to come by though. This is a beautiful record by Deben. I can't pronounce his name. Deben Bhattacharya. He was a kind of a traveling sound anthropologist, I guess. This is his road trip through Europe and the whole Middle East, and just recording all over. Really cool.
You'll have to try to remember a few of these that you showed me and send me the link so I can put them in the description so people can just check them out, because it'll be hard for people to look them up, especially with the foreign languages and stuff. But
yeah, okay.
Next after with a few of the titles there that you pulled out.
Sure. Then we get into Asia. Let's see. India.
That's a series there, the UNESCO series, or is it? You have a bunch.
I do have, yeah, some UNESCO records. None Such Explorer.
Those are great.
Yeah, I mean, Folkways. Yeah, I know that you like this record too, Kieran.
That one's great.
Put you onto this one. This is an amazing record, as is this one. If you like that record, this one right here with a female vocalist, pretty much the same sound as this one, but with a really great vocalist on top. Really great record.
There's a guy that has been making videos for years in the vinyl community, who I've told you about, who recommend tons of great stuff to me. Chris Cole, and anyway, his collection, he showed a video recently of how it's organized because someone had asked him, and his whole collection is organized by country. Every genre he has, it's by country. And he has a lot of world.
Oh yeah.
So seeing what you're showing right now kind of reminds me of when he was giving us a tour of his collection.
Yeah, that's one way to categorize your collection. Then kind of weirder experimental stuff all through here and down into here, and then this is all folk and blues.
Nice.
And then this is all kind of rock stuff, just underground
section.
What?
Small little section. Just a little bit of rock.
Oh well, yeah, it's just this and this. Quite a bit actually.
Impression.
And then weirdo like animal records and stuff like that here at the end. Bird records, whale sounds. This is a really cool record. This guy named Douglas Quin, he would record in this record. There's parts of it were recorded under the ice in Antarctica, and he's recording Weddell seals, and the sound of them is just amazing. It's like otherworldly sounds. It sounds like lasers or something like that. It's really crazy.
You'll have to send me the link to that one, or the name, and I'll attach the link.
Cool. And that's kind of it. And then downstairs, I have another one of these guys filled with hip hop and reggae.
Yeah, I remember. Oh, your reggae's down there too. I remember that.
Yeah. I moved all the kind of bass heavy music down there.
The hip hop's for the fun room.
Yeah, exactly. With the ping pong table.
And you have like a bunch of 12-inch like record label sleeves up on the wall, I think, right? You were collecting. I feel like you had like the 12-inch branded sleeves.
Yeah, I was trying to collect some hip hop 12-inch sleeves, like the generic sleeves, like Def Jam and Cold Chillin' and all the classic rap labels. Yeah.
Cool. That was awesome. I didn't expect you to give us a virtual tour like that. I think you pulled a few records to show us. We got a bit more time if you want to just show us. I think you have a few you wanted to showcase.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So given that Kieran's Kieran's videos are usually focused on jazz. I thought I'd stick with that, but kind of explore the fringes of jazz, like records that you probably wouldn't find in the jazz section at a shop. Not only because they're rare, but also because they probably wouldn't be classified in the jazz section, but they would probably appeal to people who are into jazz. So Phil Yost, kind of like outsider hippie jazz, I guess, for lack of a better description. But yeah, he made 3 records. This is his first one. It came out on Tacoma Records, which some people might recognize as the label of John Fahey, the fingerpick guitarist. Very eccentric guy. Yeah, so this record came out in 1967, I believe. And he was from California, from the Bay Area, Berkeley, I believe. And it's, yeah, he's playing every instrument himself, just multi-tracking, overdubbing. So on this record, he's playing soprano sax, flute, electric guitar, bass, maracas, and tambourine.
Damn.
And yeah, it's all instrumental, and everything is just drenched in echo effect. So it's like, gives it this really psychedelic feel. It's pretty crazy. Cool. Excellent record. Yeah.
And check out. Where'd you find that one? Is that a long time or a recent find?
I've had this one for quite a few years. Yeah. I found it at the shop years ago.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Bend City, Phil Yost. Another one that I really like, Peter Davison. This is actually a second press from the same year. It came out in 1980. The original was called Music on the Way. This one has the title Selamat Siang, and the subtitle A Musical Meditative Journey. And it's really just that. Very like deep hypnotic vibes. Again, kind of like a new agey jazz record from California, from 1980 on his own Avocado Records, one of the better titles of a record label. Yeah.
That sounds really interesting. Actually, that sounds really up my alley. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Actually, it was just reissued this year. A small label out of Austria just put it out, so you can grab that.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's Peter Davison along with 2 other people. Peter Davison's playing flute, soprano sax, synthesizer, and guitar, along with a woman playing harp and a guy playing cello. And yeah, just deep hypnotic vibes.
That's my shit.
Really great. Another one from California, coincidentally. Craig Kupka, the album Clouds, New Music for Relaxation. This is on Folkways from 1983.
You and the Folkways records. The last time you pulled out some crazy Folkways record when you came over.
Which one?
The Ben Tavera.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
There's some gems you had.
So yeah, this is another really beautiful record. Craig Kupka was based out of LA. He was a university professor teaching music for dance. And then he started some kind of organization, probably a nonprofit or something, and he was focused on stress reduction. It was something that he was really concerned about. And he put out this record, and he also put out another one called Crystals, which is being reissued right now by Folkways on vinyl. I already placed my order for that one. I've been looking for that one for a long time. This one has yet to be reissued, but I'm sure it's coming if they've already reissued the other one. So,
wow.
Yeah,
just the like kind of healing, deep, like either meditative healing, peaceful. Like that's kind of where my sweet spot is for that music. You know, in jazz we kind of when you get into jazz, you go off on those tangents of like the super intense, like out there stuff. But like really what I come back to is the stuff that feels like soothing and peaceful and stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely a time for everything. I like far out free jazz as well, but when I'm just like chilling at home, I kind of tend to lean this way a bit more often. So yeah, so it's Craig Kupka playing electric piano, arp synth, and wind chimes, along with a bunch of other guys playing like Rhodes and acoustic guitar and bowed bass guitar, vibraphone, bells, percussion. Yeah, just deep meditative vibes, kind of mysterious sounding. Excellent record. Check it out.
Man, my want list is growing as we speak. I haven't heard it, but based on your descriptions, it all sounds amazing.
Yeah, that one would definitely be up your alley.
Yeah.
Do we have time for more, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, you show another one or two.
One or two? Okay. We've got a few other records here. Tropical jazz related stuff. Max Cilla.
Damn, that's on my want list. That one.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a great record. I know that you, Kieran, bought that Georges Edouard Noël record.
Yeah, the Toto.
Yeah, which I would really like to have that, but he plays on a few tracks on this album.
Yeah, that's kind of how I came across that record. I was going through everything he played on, and that's how I heard that one.
Yeah. So Max plays a traditional bamboo flute. It's from Martinique. This record came out in the early 80s. It's great.
I love finding stuff from like the late 70s, 79 to like 84. There's like all these amazing records that like, you know, it was like 80s. I don't like 80s for most music, but there was like this sweet spot in jazz where there was still some amazing music being made in that time. When I discover them, I'm always like, I'm so happy because most of the jazz we listen to or find is from like the 60s or up until mid, you know, to late 70s. But when I find something from the 80s that like blows my mind, I'm always really excited.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of cheesy shit that came out in the 80s and all styles of music, but there was a lot of great music that's been overlooked up until now. I feel like it's finally surfacing and people are, you know, recognizing all the great music that came out in the 80s. This is one of them. Max Cilla,
the owner of Burlington Records. I think it was the last record fair, came up to the fair here, and we didn't meet up, but we were messaging. I was like, "Oh, what'd you find?" And he told me he found that record at the fair, and I guess he went to the early bird. I didn't, but I was like, "Oh my god!"
Oh yeah,
I'm glad someone good got it because he's a great guy.
Cool.
But anyway, that was in Montreal recently.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I found that one here in Montreal. There was a little shop called Backroom Records years ago in Mile End. It was literally the back room in someone's apartment, and you had it shaped into a little record shop, like records on the walls and everything. And I was down in a crate underneath everything, perfect shape for like $8. I used to find tons of stuff there.
Read about that place, and then I don't think it existed, but like I read about it years ago, and I think it was like he was doing like opening up every other week or something at some time, and I never got to go, but I think I know what you're talking about. I remember reading about it.
Yeah. Those were the good old days.
Cool. Hit us with one more.
One last record here. This is a recent acquisition. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I guess it's Leve. It's from Guadeloupe. From 1981 or 83, something like that. It's I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it's definitely heavily influenced by jazz. It's funky, soulful. I don't know what else to say about it. It's on the Henry Debs label.
I have no idea, but the cover is it like shiny or it's just gold? Like what's the crazy looking wild cover?
Yeah, beautiful. It caught my eye for sure. I'd never seen this record before. It's pretty amazing though. Hopefully it'll be reissued someday.
And what does that sound like? It's kind of like if give me an idea because I have no idea.
Funky. It's got kind of an 80s sound for like the bass guitar. That kind of gives it away as an 80s record. But other than that, it's just like tropical jazz, funky tropical jazz.
So I'm definitely gonna need you to send me these names, and I'll put all the links to these awesome records that I mean, the only one I knew was the Cilla. All the others is new to me. So every time I go over to Nate's or he comes over, is always discovering a whole bunch of new awesome stuff. So thank you very much for for sharing all that with us.
No problem. My pleasure.
I look forward to one day getting to come back to the shop and do some digging, and even more so having a listening session. That's always great nights when we get to hang out and have a beer and listen to great music, discover new shit.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's hope it happens.
I sometimes show Nate a record he doesn't know, but it's rare.
It happens more and more, man. You've been digging deep these years.
Trying. Cool. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.